When you finally detach, not to punish him, but to protect yourself, something profound happens. You stop giving him emotional oxygen, and suddenly he can't breathe. Science calls it neural withdrawal, but your heart knows it by another name, silence. Because when you detach, something in him starts to ache in a way he can't explain. Not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly, like a phantom limb that still reaches for what's no longer there. At first, he doesn't notice the absence. He thinks you're just giving him space, that you'll come back like you always do. He scrolls, he texts, he laughs. But something feels off. There's no echo anymore. No soft vibration of validation humming through his ego. And for the first time, he feels what you felt for months, disconnection. You remember the night it started, the fight that wasn't really a fight. Just another round of him withdrawing, and you trying to decode silence like a language you were never meant to learn. You sat there, phone in hand, staring at the message thread, typing, deleting, typing again. Your heart was trying to write a paragraph, but your pride could only manage a full stop. That night, something in you cracked. But not in a way that broke. It cracked like dawn does, quietly, inevitably. You realized you were done fighting for a heartbeat that refused to meet yours halfway. So you went quiet, and that silence, it wasn't revenge. It was resurrection. You see, emotional detachment doesn't happen overnight. It's the slow rewiring of your nervous system. The body learning how to exist without his chaos, his attention, his unpredictability. Because the truth is, you weren't addicted to him. You were addicted to the dopamine that came from his inconsistency. The high of his return after emotional starvation. It's biology, it's brain chemistry. Every time he pulled away and came back, your body learned to crave the roller coaster. And now, as you sit in silence, your brain protests, your chest tightens, your fingers twitch to reach for your phone, but your soul whispers, don't. Because you know this time isn't like the others. This time, your silence isn't fear, it's faith in yourself. Days pass, he doesn't text. You tell yourself you're fine, that detachment means indifference. But deep down, you feel every second stretch like eternity. You feel the withdrawal, the tremor, the emptiness. Because detachment isn't a switch. It's a mourning. You're not just losing him, you're losing the illusion. The version of yourself that believed if you just loved him harder, he'd finally see you. That's the part that hurts. Not his absence, but the death of your hope. And while you're trying to make peace with that, something unexpected happens. His silence starts to sound different. At first, you thought it was your imagination, that subtle pull in the air, the strange way he watches your stories, but never reaches out. But no, it's real. Because when you detach, you break the emotional symmetry. The balance shifts. And the energy that once flowed from you, the checking, the caring, the forgiving, it's gone. He feels it in his chest before he understands it in his mind. That's why he lingers on your profile. Why he drafts messages and deletes them. Why he remembers things he used to overlook. The sound of your laugh. The way you said his name like it mattered. He's not missing you. He's missing the reflection of himself he used to see in your eyes. Because you were never just a woman. You were his mirror, and now that mirror is gone. There's a strange kind of power in absence. It's quieter than anger, softer than revenge, but it burns deeper. Because silence is honest. It tells the truth words can't. He used to think your love was infinite, that no matter how far he pulled away, you'd wait. You always did. Until one day, you didn't. You stopped explaining. stopped defending your emotions like a crime scene, stopped begging to be understood. You realized that love without respect is just noise. And you were tired of being the one who kept the rhythm alive. So you let the silence breathe. You learned to sit with the discomfort. The same stillness that once scared you started to feel sacred. Your world didn't end. It just got quieter. And in that quiet, you began to hear your own voice again, the one he drowned out with mixed signals and promises that never came true. The one that whispered, "You're allowed to let go." Psychologists say that when someone emotionally detaches, the brain of the one being detached from experiences the same pain as a physical injury. That's why he suddenly feels restless. Why the same silence that once meant freedom now feels like a wound. His nervous system is searching for the emotional signal you used to send. The warmth, the softness, the reassurance that made him feel enough. But the signal is gone. And without it, he begins to feel what you've felt all along. Uncertainty. It's ironic, isn't it? He never noticed your tears, but now he notices your silence. He never valued your presence, but now your absence haunts him. Because pain always finds balance. And what you carried in your heart for months, he's beginning to carry in his now. But you're not watching him anymore. You're not waiting for him to realize what he's lost. Because detachment doesn't need his awareness. It only needs your decision. To finally stop chasing the version of him you built in your mind. To stop craving validation from a man who mistook your softness for surrender. You're learning the quiet art of self-restoration. And every day you don't reach out, you reclaim a piece of yourself. You walk differently now, lighter. Not because you've moved on, but because you've moved inward. You start noticing small joys. The warmth of your coffee, the sound of morning birds, the peace that comes from not needing to check your phone. You used to chase closure in his words, but now you find it in your own silence. Because sometimes the loudest, "I'm done," is the one you never say out loud. He'll feel it in the quiet moments, in the spaces where your energy used to live. He'll replay old messages, scroll through pictures, and tell himself he's just curious. But his body knows better. It's craving the emotional connection it took for granted. That's the thing about emotional detachment. It doesn't announce itself. It just arrives one day, quietly, after too many nights of trying to hold together something that refused to stay whole. And when it does, the silence you once feared becomes your freedom. He will call it coldness. But it's not. It's clarity. Because you finally understand you can love someone deeply and still choose yourself. You can miss him and not return. You can wish him healing and still protect your peace. That's the paradox of growth. You outgrow what once defined you. And while he wonders why you stopped trying, you'll be busy learning what love actually feels like. Calm, steady, reciprocated. Not the kind that takes your breath away, but the kind that helps you breathe easier. You'll look back one day and realize his silence didn't break you, it built you. It taught you what you deserve. Because in the end, when you detach, you don't disappear, you return to yourself. And somewhere out there, he finally feels what he made you feel. Not because you punished him, but because the energy always finds its way home. It's strange how silence can feel louder than words. After that night, she couldn't stop replaying his eyes. The way they said everything he never dared to. It was as if, for a brief moment, she'd seen the man behind the armor, the one who'd been hiding for years, not because he didn't care, but because caring too much had once broken him. And maybe that's what most people miss. that men who seem emotionally unavailable aren't cold. They're protective. They protect their hearts the same way a soldier protects a wound that's never fully healed. But here's the thing. Love can't reach through armor unless someone's brave enough to look past the metal. She thought about that as she sat across from him the next day. The same man who had always been careful with words, deliberate with touches, and quiet with feelings. The kind of man who didn't flinch in chaos, but grew uneasy in moments of emotional intimacy. So she decided to do something most women don't. She didn't chase clarity. She invited it. Instead of asking, "Why don't you open up?" she asked softly, "What makes it hard for you to?" That one question changed everything. He froze, not because he didn't want to answer, but because no one had ever asked him that way. Every other time, he felt interrogated. This time, he felt understood. And that's the secret. Men don't open up when they feel pressured. They open up when they feel safe. You see, a man's silence isn't rejection. It's fear disguised as control. It's the echo of a boy who once tried to explain his feelings, only to be told to man up. It's years of emotional suppression compressed into stillness. And every time a woman gets angry at that silence, he hears confirmation of what he's always feared. That vulnerability is weakness, and love is conditional. But when she asked him that question, with no demand in her tone, only curiosity, something shifted. His eyes softened. His posture loosened. He didn't say much that day, just, "It's not easy to explain." But she saw it. The first crack in his wall. Here's the truth that few women understand. What men secretly crave isn't admiration. It's acceptance in their mess. He doesn't want a woman who only loves him when he's confident, decisive, and strong. He wants a woman who sees him in confusion, fear, and doubt, and still doesn't pull away. Because the deepest hunger of a man's soul isn't for physical touch. It's for emotional permission. The permission to be human. And yet, most relationships fail right there. Because when a man finally shows that side, the one without answers, the one who's scared or lost, many women unconsciously punish him for it. They lose attraction, pull back, or start fixing him. And that confirms his worst belief, that he's only lovable when he's in control. But the woman who knows how to hold space for that, who doesn't try to fix or decode him, but simply lets him be, she becomes unforgettable. One night, months later, they were sitting in his car after a long drive. The rain tapped gently against the windshield. The city lights blurred like watercolor behind them. He was quiet again. But it wasn't the kind of silence that built walls. It was the kind that built bridges. He looked at her, hesitant, then said something he'd never said to anyone before. "I don't know why, but when I'm with you, I don't feel like I have to be perfect." She smiled. "That's because you don't." He looked away, half smiling, half ashamed. "You'd be surprised how many people only love the version of me that looks like I've got it all figured out." And, she replied, maybe that's why they never got to meet the real you. He exhaled. Long, slow, almost like a surrender. That was the night his silence finally started to speak. If you've ever wondered why a man pulls away right when you think things are going well, it's because he's entering a space where emotional truth begins. And for most men, that's foreign territory. It's the place where control ends and closeness begins. And that terrifies them. But deep down, every man craves what he can't admit. To be known without having to explain. To be seen without having to perform. To be loved without having to earn it. He might not say it in words, but his actions, his glances, his silences, they all whisper the same longing. Will you still love me if I'm not strong today? And the answer, if you give it from your heart, can change everything. Here's what she learned the hard way. You can't teach a man to open up. You can only invite him into a space where his defenses aren't needed. That means stop trying to decode every pause, every short reply, every unread message. Instead, ask yourself, what is his silence trying to protect? Because if you listen closely, silence is not emptiness. It's full of stories he's not ready to tell, emotions he doesn't yet trust himself to reveal, and fears that feel too heavy to hand over. Let's go deeper into his psychology for a moment. When a man is emotionally distant, it's often not about you at all. It's about what love meant to him growing up. If he grew up in a home where love was earned through performance, through grades, achievements, or compliance, he unconsciously carries that into adulthood. He believes love must be deserved, not received. So when he meets a woman who offers genuine emotional connection, his nervous system panics. Because now he's facing something unfamiliar, unconditional presence. And our minds always fear what feels unfamiliar, even if it's good. She began to notice it. Every time she pulled back to protect her own heart, he'd lean in. Every time she leaned in with genuine care, he'd pull away, not out of indifference, but confusion. It was the classic dance of modern love, where both people are craving closeness, but their defenses keep them apart. But she didn't chase him this time. She simply held her energy, grounded, calm, radiant. And that's when he returned, not out of guilt, but gravity. Because here's another truth about men: they always return to the woman who makes them feel safe in their truth. Not the one who demands it. Not the one who chases it, but the one who quietly embodies it. She didn't beg him to open up. She became the space where he could. And that changed everything. By the time the next season rolled in, something in him had softened. He still didn't talk about feelings much, but he showed them differently now, through consistency, through presence, through the subtle ways. He reached for her hand without realizing it. That's when she understood. Love isn't about how much someone talks. It's about how deeply they show up. He didn't crave constant reassurance. He craved resonance. That unspoken knowing that said, "You get me, even when I don't say a word." And that's the rare kind of connection most men spend their whole lives searching for, but never admit they need. She once asked him, "What does love mean to you?" He thought for a long time, then said, "It's when I can finally exhale." She smiled, because that was it. That's what he'd been searching for all along. Not romance, not admiration, not perfection, but peace. And isn't that what we all crave? To be with someone who makes our soul breathe again. In the next chapter of their story, she'll learn something even deeper. That sometimes a man's love isn't shown through words, but through his quiet sacrifices. And that what he craves the most isn't just to be understood, but to be trusted with a woman's heart. Because when a man feels truly trusted, he stops performing and starts revealing. And that's when the real relationship begins. There's a strange kind of silence that comes after true closure. It doesn't sting anymore. It doesn't ache. It just is. It's the sound of everything you used to fight quieting down inside you. The mind stops replaying. The heart stops bargaining. And for the first time in forever, you're not waiting for his name to appear on your screen. You're waiting for the sun to rise. You used to think healing would feel loud, like fireworks or breakthroughs or cinematic tears. But it didn't. It came softly. One morning you just didn't care if he understood anymore. You didn't need him to regret. You didn't need the universe to deliver poetic justice. You just wanted peace. And that's how you knew you were finally free. You start to notice the world again. How the light spills across your bedroom wall in golden streaks. How the city hums beneath your window like a heartbeat. You're present again. Not as someone recovering from love, but as someone rediscovering life. You make your coffee slower now. You walk lighter. You laugh louder, not to fill the silence, but because the silence doesn't scare you anymore. You've stopped performing calmness. You've become it. And that's what makes you magnetic again, because peace is the loudest thing you can ever wear. It's funny, you used to mistake silence for absence. You used to think detachment meant he won. But now you see it for what it really is: clarity. Silence doesn't mean you stopped caring. It means you stopped explaining, stopped negotiating your worth, stopped trying to translate your heart to someone who only listened to his ego. Now, your energy speaks for you, and that energy says, "I'm not waiting anymore." You don't say it out loud. You live it. Every boundary you keep. Every no, you say softly but firmly. Every time you walk away from something that once drained you. That's your new language. The one he can still feel, even from a distance. He still thinks of you sometimes. You can sense it, that invisible pull. But it doesn't make your heart race anymore. It makes you smile. Because you know what it means now. It's not a sign of unfinished love. It's the echo of your energy still teaching him. The final lesson of what presence feels like once it's gone. He'll never say it, but part of him is grateful for you. Because in losing you, he met his truth. And you met your freedom. You start noticing how people treat you differently now. How conversations shift when your energy changes. Men who once sensed your softness as permission now sense it as power. They approach with respect, not arrogance. With curiosity, not control, because you no longer lead with fear. You lead with peace. You've become what no one can fake. A woman who trusts herself. You don't need to prove your worth through effort. You don't need to explain your heart to be understood. And you certainly don't need to chase what was never meant to stay. Because deep down, you've realized the love you were always begging for was meant to come from you. Some nights, though, you still think of him. Not with pain, but with a strange tenderness. You remember how you used to whisper to yourself, "If he just understood." Now you know, he did. Just too late. But that's the nature of awakening. It doesn't happen when you want it to. It happens when it's meant to. He had to lose your warmth to recognize its weight. And you had to lose his chaos to recognize your calm. That's balance. That's the quiet justice of the universe. One evening, you find yourself writing again. Not about him, but about what came after. You write about how strength isn't loud. How closure isn't a conversation. How love, when it's real, doesn't demand. It expands. You write because your heart has something new to say now, not "look what you did to me," but "look what I became." You read your words and they feel like poetry. Because they are. They're the poetry you earned by surviving. And that's when it hits you. You don't need to be remembered anymore. You just need to be whole. There's a mirror in your room you used to avoid. Too many memories. Too many versions of yourself you didn't recognize. But one morning, you stand in front of it and don't flinch. Your reflection doesn't look broken. It looks quietly proud. You notice the small things. The steadiness in your eyes. The soft curve of your smile. The peace that wasn't there before. And suddenly you understand what real beauty feels like. It's not youth. It's not perfection. It's alignment. It's the glow that comes from not needing validation anymore. The light that returns once you stop shrinking to fit into someone else's story. You've outgrown chaos. You've outgrown conditional love. And most of all, you've outgrown the need to be chosen because you already chose yourself. Months later, you'll pass by a place that used to sting, the street where you once waited for him, the restaurant where you once sat pretending you were fine. But now, when you walk by, you won't feel sadness. You'll feel grace. Because those places don't hold pain anymore. They hold proof. Proof that you've lived, learned, and risen. You'll smile, not because you miss him, but because you're proud of the woman who walked through that fire and didn't lose her softness. That's the difference now. You're still soft, but you're not breakable. You're still loving, but you're not waiting. You're still open, but you're no longer afraid. That's what healed looks like. One morning, your phone lights up with a message from a number you know by heart. You hesitate. Not because it hurts, but because it doesn't. You read it once. I finally get what you meant. You don't reply. Not out of pride, out of peace. You just smile, lock your phone, and whisper to yourself, "So do I?" Because you know what he's really saying. He's saying, "He changed me." And you're saying, "You were never meant to stay, only to awaken me." Later that evening, you watch the sunset alone, the sky painted in fire and gold. You realize how far you've come. Once, you were the woman who begged for closure. Now, you are the woman who is closure. You've become the calm after every storm you once feared. You've become the woman you needed when you were breaking. And somewhere in the quiet, you whisper, not to him, but to yourself, "Thank you for leaving. You made space for me." Now, when someone asks you what you want in love, you don't list qualities. You describe a feeling: peace, presence, depth. You're no longer impressed by intensity that burns fast. You crave consistency that glows steady. You've learned that love isn't supposed to feel like adrenaline. It's supposed to feel like home. And that realization, that soft, grounded wisdom, becomes your power, because now you attract differently. You love differently. You are different. He'll never forget you, not because you said something clever or did something dramatic. He'll never forget you because you spoke from truth, then lived by it. You became the mirror he couldn't face, and the peace he'll never find again. Not because he can't, but because he lost the version of himself that existed only in your presence. But that's not your burden anymore. That's his lesson. Your lesson was to stop teaching men how to love you and start remembering that you already knew. Now, your silence is no longer empty. It's sacred. It's the space where you meet yourself every day. It's the reminder that love begins here, not out there. So the next time someone asks what happened to the girl who used to overthink, overgive, and overstay, you'll smile softly and say, she finally listened to her own words. And if they ask what you said, you'll whisper, I trust you to figure it out. Because this time, you're saying it to yourself. The woman who once broke has now bloomed. And somewhere in the distance, he remembers her voice, not as pain, but as truth.